We have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and space-age technology.
There's still gray-haired senior managers out there who are still thinking that for 25 years I've been a leader of this type of group, and that's the way I know how to lead, so everybody should come in.
I've seen transformations fail because people don't focus on the fundamentals.
One mission isn't one mission. It's 1,000 little missions that the leader can then tie all together.
Technology has transformed how we live, work, and connect. And behind that change are visionary people with bold ideas. Welcome to the Bridgecast, where host Scott Kinka explores hybrid work, AI, and our evolving future with tech's brightest minds. Presented by Bridgepointe Technologies, the nation's leading tech advisory firm. Experience a better way. The Bridgepointe way.
I should have left it. All right, we're going to shift gears here. We're going to go live tech summit. I'm going to pull two clips. The first one's going to be from Gary Sorrentino of Zoom, CIO, global CIO of Zoom. And then the next one is going to be MacFarland, who we've talked about multiple times, Comcast, Chief Development Officer at Comcast. This was the two-parter live we did in Miami. Episodes were released on October 30th and November 4th. Go back and watch them. So here's what Gary said. By 2030, a new wave of leadership will address the return to office and hybrid work. So let's play that clip.
We're in a state where there's still gray-haired senior managers out there, right? Who are still thinking that for 25 years I've been a leader of this type of group, and that's the way I know how to lead, so everybody should come in.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see by 2030, some of the statistics show that a new wave of leadership is going to come aboard, and they're going to readdress this. Because I think the next wave of leadership is going to say, what's right for the people that work for me, and what's right for the outcome of my company, and maybe I'm going to throw away the older guy's book. Okay. And I think we're going to see that change come soon, maybe around 2030, because that's when it's going to show that boomers, upper end, Gen Xs are going to start retiring. About 10,000 boomers retire a day.
Sure.
At the end of the day, and we're going to see a new wave of people. You talk about the next wave, right? At the end of the day, the new cohort of people, Gen Zs, Gen A's who are 12 years old now, right? They're starting to think about companies, right? They don't want to work in mom and dad's company anymore, right? They want a quality of life. They want a different way of working.
So are we throwing away the older guys' books on this? More specifically, is The Office dead?
No, The Office isn't dead. But I think the traditional office use is dead, more than likely. I mean, listen, there are industries that are always going to have offices because of physical requirements of needing to be present for the job. You know, you're going to have hospitals and medical facilities, and you're going to have manufacturing facilities, even though more and more of them may be run by actual robots, getting back to the point that I just made. But I think for traditional information work, the kind of work we do, the kind of work that a lot of technology people do, the office, the way we think about the office is a largely dead concept at the end of the day. For my friends who are in commercial real estate, they're like, Kinka, I can't believe you just said that. It doesn't mean we don't need places to gather, but I wholeheartedly agree with Gary that, you know, and certainly COVID pushed it forward because everybody went home. You know, we didn't have this like slight generational motion that went over time. We had this like, everybody went home and they were like, oh, we can do this. And then we were immediately faced with all of the modality changes. How do we meet? How do we do water cooler? How do we do all this stuff? And some folks reacted with well, we got to go back, or we have to demand coming back, or we're not collaborating, which, okay, I mean, that's a moderate to reasonable short-term reaction. But the reality of it is there's this wave of new workers who are coming in anyway, who never worked any other way, and they're not going to work that way. So I agree with Gary that if you want to attract talent, you're going to have a strategy around this. What I would call it is a purposeful or intentional strategy around hybrid work. Where I fully agree with him is that we've crossed the chasm. Like, hybrid is not a stopgap to the place we're going to ultimately land. It is the place where we've landed. So businesses have to plan around hybrid work, number one. And two, IT has to plan around architecting for hybrid work. You know, what's the remote process? What's my in-office process? No, you have it all. In a lot of ways, we've got to work on empowering and securing the end user, not the end user's location. There's a lot around zero trust and all the things that are going on around that. So the security is rising to meet this. But we've crossed the chasm. I wholeheartedly agree with Gary. And by the way, he does a great job talking about this concept. It's an area of passion for him. So I love hearing him talk about it.
Yeah, it's always fun to listen to, and it makes you think. So this next one, real quick, we're jumping into the MacFarland clip where at the end of it, he says, there's this really magical thing that gets lost. We're going to find out what he was talking about because I'm going to ask you what that magical thing is. So here's Chris.
I think fundamentally the day your business has to make a decision of what your culture is going to be, and part of it is employee engagement and where they're going to work and how they're going to work. But I think you're in this era where, just like those of us in the channel, you want to meet customers where they want to be met. You want to serve them where they're going to be. Wherever they're at, you need to provide them with the capabilities so that they can actually do their work, hopefully very efficiently. But the challenges that we continue to see is that when you go down to the younger generations, it's really hard to onboard, train, quasi-apprentice, and then there's this really magical thing that gets lost.
So what's he mean? What's getting lost?
I mean, the water cooler gets lost. And again, is that a problem with hybrid work, or a problem with the new generation coming in, or a problem with the way that we've historically trained and built someone into a culture? And I would venture to guess it's probably more at the issue of the latter there. You know, we don't know how to adopt people into the business yet. We haven't changed our paradigm. But if you think about it, you know, what was your first office job, Gene?
Oh God, you're making me go back. I guess it was at Reliance. I was in the mainframe section printing booklets for an insurance company.
Okay. And when you started your first day, did they send you off to an extensive training program, or did they just chuck you in and you were just in the waters with everybody else doing stuff and learning that way?
They went, there's Pedro in the back. There's the machine. Get going.
Yeah. You know, so the challenge we've got, what gets lost is it's hard to establish culture when you're staring at people over a screen. It's hard to OTJ, on the job train, when you're staring at people over a screen. It's hard to get comfortable in human interaction when you do have to do it, when you're staring at a screen. But I think the requirement is on the generation that's leaving the workforce or leading the workforce right now to figure out how to establish those things with the new workers who are coming in. It's not the fault of the new worker that's coming in that we don't have a water cooler. Right. They want to learn. You know, maybe they have a better feeling about work-life balance than we all have, that I still struggle with. But we haven't given them an alternative, right? So I think, I mean, that's what he's talking about. That's what ultimately gets lost. I think the other thing to really consider here, and I'm not sure if we talked about it, if it was in this clip or if it was in another one, but thematically, I think the other thing that we've done a poor job is in setting communications expectations. And here's what I mean by that. Like, you and I, if I'm sending you something that I want you to have record of, that I have record of when you received it, that I'm expecting a thoughtful reply, I email you. If I have something that I want right now, I text you. I might Teams message you or Zoom message you, but you may or may not be in that platform. If I were interacting with someone who is new to the workforce, they might treat mail like mail. Their mobile phone, their personal device, may be off limits to them when they're at work. They don't even think about it. And the first place they go to is Slack or Teams or Zoom or something like that from a messaging perspective. Most of the time when I hear about issues at work with people and communication, that person's not responsive, or we've had this issue around this, or culturally, this generation, this or that. It's not a function of the person or the generation. It's a function that the business hasn't decided and set standards around expectations for how we communicate. This is the 5 generations in the workforce thing, right? The oldest generation in the workforce picks up the phone. The next generation in the workforce emails, but you know, why didn't you? Do you ever get the call that says, why didn't you answer my email? And the email was 20 minutes ago. You know, the suffix to email is mail. Like, it came to me, I waited for it to be delivered. I threw it in a pile. I opened it later. Like, why are you sending me an email thinking I'm going to respond to you in 10 minutes, right? The next generation is going to text. The next generation is going to Snap or Facebook message or, you know, Insta. So I think it's incumbent on the business to set expectations with employees. Like, we have 5 generations. If I mail you, this is my expectation of the way that you're going to return it. And for some generations, it's going to be uncomfortable, but there's got to be a standard set. And that's on the business leaders. That's on IT leaders in particular to lead that charge.
Okay. So business leaders, if you're not on Insta, get there. Is that what we're saying? Is that what we're saying? My daughters will be happy about that, although they're snap kids, right? All right. So we talked this year a little bit about the way we change work and how that's supported or not supported by leadership.
Yep.
We had some nuggets about business and leadership dropped on us this year. There's two of them, Aaron Darcy, and there's another one from Chad Towns. I'm going to play the one from Aaron Darcy first from Lumen about business transformation.
I think even for CIOs today, with what's going on with AI and cloud and multi-cloud and, just really the explosive growth in technology and certainly networking and data, like you really can't be an operator. And you have to think about transformation. So if you're not comfortable with that, you've probably got to surround yourself with people that are, because you're not going to get from where you are today to where you need to go without some type of transformation, transforming your process, things of that nature as well. And that's easy to say, but hard to do. And I've seen transformations fail because people don't focus on the fundamentals.
I'll just let you riff on that one. What were your thoughts on that business leadership thing?
Violent agreement. He said it perhaps better than I have, so I'm going to adopt some of that language. But we have said all year long, and even going back over the last couple of seasons of episodes, that the role of the IT leader has changed. And really, you are a transformation agent. If you're a CIO with a mid-sized, even now mid-sized IT department, you've got to have people who are operating the business. The role of the CIO is sitting next to the CEO, is sitting next to the CRO, is sitting next to the CFO in today's economy. It just flat out is. The fundamentals of business transformation need to be in place. If you are somebody who wants to punch the clock and watch the screen, you're not a CIO. Maybe that's controversial, maybe that's challenging, but you're not a CIO. The job of the CIO is to lead the business through business transformation, because we have already crossed into the age where most transformation is going to be technology led, right? So you need the directors and the senior managers who want to stare at the screens and can run a staff who are going to do that and do that work. And hopefully you can be creative enough to leverage AI and automation and tools so that those jobs become smaller. But you've got to be intentional. You've got to have a think tank group inside your IT department, and you have to have an entire function, the primary function, focused on working the business through business transformation in all these categories at all times. And that's based on the how, where, what, and why of the worker and production inside the business, whatever the business happens to produce or whatever the main thing needs to be. It's about patient outcomes, customer outcomes, widgets defined, sales, et cetera. That's an IT job. I agree 100%. And I love the way he expressed it.
Love it. Love it. All right. And one more, sticking with the business leadership content. We're going to talk to Chad Towns, or we did talk to him. Let me show this clip from Chad Towns of AT&T.
The biggest thing that I found was successful with it is you got to build custom metrics. Everybody wants to be measured. Am I doing a good job? Yeah. But the metric isn't the same for every group. And so you have to change that metric so it ties back to the central theme, but it's specific enough that the people in that group can say, if I achieve this, it lends to that greater good. It lends to the collective effort that we're driving toward. I love getting everybody focused on one mission, but one mission isn't one mission. It's 1,000 little missions that the leader can then tie all together. And then you also have to communicate how those all fit together and what we're working towards.
1,000 little missions, go.
Let's piggyback on what I just said. CIOs, go listen to this episode. I didn't really know Chad well, and I know everybody over at AT&T, but he got brought in. Chad's like the Mr. Fix-It of AT&T. Like, he's been in every business function there. And this episode we didn't get into tech. We were living in that business transformation topic. He's chief change agent inside of AT&T.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of nuggets there. I won't get into the other ones. I picked this one because it resonates with me so much. At Bridgepointe, we talk about this big rocks theory, right? Which is, you've heard the big rock story, right? Which is if you take a vase or if you fill it with water and you have sand and stones and big rocks, you know what I mean? You get the idea, right? If you build it up and then you put the big rocks on last, the water will spill over, right? So the idea is that everything is driven off of the top level initiatives at the business. And it's something that we follow. And I love the way he expressed it, a million little missions, is that if your KPI on the front line is how many of these things I can produce, there's got to be a direct line to what your immediate leader's goals are for the year. and then direct line to their immediate leaders' goals. And ultimately, like, you should be able to chase it, whether it's 2 or 47 levels, to the 5 goals of the CIO or the CEO inside of that year. So we focus on this concept of big rocks, where you're like, these are the themes for this year. We want to get these 5 things done. When you drive all the way down to the frontline leader or the frontline employee, their primary KPIs or really KPIs in the business are the wood you're chopping, the OKRs, the projects you're working on for that year, should be able to trace their way all the way back to those 5 things from the business. And if you can't do that, is that thing really that important? It's an interesting way of challenging yourself when you're planning for the year. And it's a good way for, I think, IT leaders to think about all the things inside the business, right, that they have to do. Yes, you have to keep the lights on, of course. You know, what happens when you don't? Does it customer satisfaction? Do you sell less? Do you make less? Do you, whatever. So just make sure there's a direct line to, from your million, right? There's million little projects on up through the ones that matter.
Love it. That's really
I love
good
that
advice.
episode.
Actually, really, really good advice. Starting from the bottom in my mind and working back up to the top, the most important initiatives. That's pretty good. One more.
Okay. Yep.
This one, we could have pulled 1,000 of these. This is our friend Neil Foard. We picked this one because it ties to the rest of the stuff. It's pertinent to this episode and the rest of the stuff we just talked about. So let's play the Neil Foard clip.
We're primitive creatures. The phrase is, we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and space-age technology. But we still make decisions on our emotions. So let's take advantage of the space-age technology to pull us back into the campfire and do what you know is true, which is people buy from people they like. People buy from people they trust. People have a choice. Why not?
Simply put, how's this make you feel? How's this tie back to everything else we've talked about today and throughout the whole year, 2025?
I mean, it says it better than anything that I think I could have said. Obviously, Neil's an incredible speaker, but I mean, think about that. We have Paleolithic emotions, meaning, this crude matter, Star Wars reference, right? We're mammals at the end of the day. We react to stimuli. Whether it's a frontline employee or the person in IT who's responding to an alarm or whatever. Okay, so you have that. Then you have medieval institutions, this hierarchical structure of the way we work, the way we manage people, the expectations that we have, the, measure of productivity is how hard it looks like you're working over how many hours as opposed to what your output is. Like, that's the kind of medieval institutions that we're dealing with. And then we have all this space age tech that should help us think faster and better and quicker and, maybe take some humans out of the loop, or at least build autonomous structures to be able to get more things done. It's really the most interesting time to be alive, and in particular to be in tech, because all those 3 things exist and are real right now. Human nature is millions of years old. You know what I mean? Our structures around the way we think about authority and hard work and all that haven't changed in thousands of years. And now we have the stuff that empowers it. We could do a whole episode just unpacking, I think, that statement. That's the job, in my mind, of the CIO. That's the job of the CEO in the business, is to rationalize those 3 things. Just a remarkable conversation with that guy.
Yeah, there's been a couple of them, right? And there has been a couple of them. We could point to so many. So, all right. So now I'm going to rapid fire on you. This is for the sake of time, right? Because if they're still with us here, they've been listening for a while. So we're going to get down and dirty a little bit. I'm going to ask you to give me some just quick thoughts. We don't have to go dive too deep, and then we're going to get into some personal stuff about you. So first question I have for you, 94 episodes in, this is the 94th. And aside from all the stuff you've learned from me, that was a joke. Looking back at the 26, you could have said, no, it's not. You haven't playing. But we'll leave it there. I'm leaving it there. Looking back at the 26 episodes we did in 25, was there a guest or a conversation that changed the way that you look at the tech landscape moving forward?
I don't think there was one that changed, but I do think, apropos, great segue. I mean, I think that our ongoing conversations with Neil Foard have really made me think about how we speak about tech, how we engage with our customers in a lot of ways. I think it did the same, and his keynote and his engagement in our community did the same for a lot of our partners, a lot of our strategists in the field. To really think about things from a human-centered perspective, from a purposeful perspective. I think When we started this podcast, we were like, this is going to be the nerdiest podcast in the history of nerdy podcasts. You know, we were going to bring on our supplier partners who Bridgepointe works with, and we were going to have techie, and we have had some doozies.
Oh yeah.
Over the course of 96 episodes now.
Yep. 94
episodes. But I think what happens is like the natural progression back towards how to make all of this tech usable by humans has just been an undercurrent, and it continues to push in that direction. So when Neil kind of punched us in the face this year as a community, and it started on that episode, it just really had a lot. It made me rethink quite a bit about the way I approach, you know, leading my customers, leading this organization, running this podcast, kind of how we want to theme these talks. And I think, by the way, you also see it in the numbers. Like we had early on, we had episodes that went crazy where we talked about one like super nerdy thing, you know, whatever that is. And then over the course of this year, you look at the ones that became hitters for us. Yeah. Even we're talking with super techie people.
Yep.
It was philosophical in a lot of ways. And I think that's emblematic of the way IT's changed.
Yeah.
So so it didn't change the way, but I would say solidified the natural progression that we've had in this narrative over 94 episodes.
Okay. Love it. And I'm gonna bullet point through some of these. The one thing I had to point out was, because you actually have the book with you, The Art of War, but energy without strategy is just a chaos, is a quote from Sun Tzu that came up multiple times this year. If I just lump together cost center, pre-pandemic, the growth engine, you talk a lot about house designers versus plumbers. Can you tie that quote back to any of those things that we talk about?
I think it's the statement we just made about intentionality. And it has a lot to do with, I think, the way we think about productivity. You know, on many of these episodes and up on stage and in the talks I've given, like one of the things that comes up is that our current measures of productivity don't fit the way we work today. And it certainly doesn't fit the way technology is evolving, right? Like it used to be like, you'd hire somebody right out of school and you're like, man, that kid's good. Shows up early, leaves late, press shirt, ties on. That person gets 3 things done over the course of the day. With the person who uses AI and works out of their house gets 30 things done. Like, how do we measure productivity today? And that's really what this is. I think there's 2 things in that. One is energy doesn't necessarily produce results only, right? And I think the second one is that strategy is everything. I mean, you have to have a plan. You have to write the plan. You have to work the plan. Otherwise, you don't know if you're having a good day or a bad day. And I think at no time in history probably has that ever been more pertinent than now when you're in such an era of business transformation.
That's a great segue into my next question, which is, we talk a lot about human versus machine. And I know a lot of people probably, if they watch the show, or if they don't, they're worried about their jobs being taken over by AI, right? So I'm just going to ask you this quick question. You know, should workers be worried about being replaced, or should they be focusing on becoming experts at prompt engineering and guiding the machines?
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered your question. Yes, there will be some jobs that are outsourced to physical robots, to AI, to anything along those lines. But again, in the current way that we interact with AI is that it needs to be instructed, right? How many times have you heard me say, like, AI is designed to be referential, but it isn't designed to be self-referential, meaning that it needs input. It's smart enough to equate input 1, input 2, input 3, and put them together. Sometimes it puts them together and still puts them together incorrectly. And that's the human in the loop piece. So yeah, I think people who are experts in their field and who know how to prompt, that job's never going to go away. The machines need instruction at the end of the day. So if you're in one of those areas where you are concerned that your job may be on the cutting room floor, experiment. Play with it. Get a free account on ChatGPT and play around. Because ultimately, if you're a factory worker who's picking up a bumper and moving it from, point A to point B, ultimately somebody's got to inform the machine how to do that. Be the best bumper putter on her person ever who also knows how to do AI. Right. Somewhere they're going to come in, there's a machine that needs to do this, but we're going to need to train it over the next 18 months. Okay, who does that?
Yep.
Yeah. 100%.
Love it. I know that's a big question in a lot of people's minds.
As it should be. Yeah. It's a fair question too.
Yep. But the outcome isn't as dire from your perspective as I thought it was going to be. So that's good news, I think.
Yeah, I do think though also, like, we're going to be thinking about, I'm going to harken it back to that productivity thing. You know, if we do this right, Chris MacFarland's really good at this. Like, he's one of the most hopeful technical people you've ever met. You know, you get to the end, if you remember from that episode, the one to text somebody, he's just like, I'm ready for this to be the golden age of humanity because we get more time back to be humans if we do this right.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way we should be thinking about this.
Interesting.
But a whole lot of this is the Neil Foard piece. This is the medieval infrastructures, right? Need to change to be able to get there. But I'm hopeful.
Wow. That's awesome. And that's a clip. That's going to be a clip. I can
Okay.
guarantee it.
Fire
All
away.
right. Now, hot seat questions. You ready for this?
Shoot, man.
Well,
go.
I'll tell you what. Let's do this real quick. Why don't we, as is customary at this episode,
Okay.
right? Why'd you look at me like that? You're worried about what's coming next? I walked out of the house with the bottle of bourbon. My wife was like, where are you going? I was like, don't worry about it. I'll be back in an hour and a half. So as is customary, we celebrate the previous year and we toast to the year coming up.
Okay.
We usually do wine in your basement, but we have a new set this year. We're stepping the game up. So we decided to bump it a little bit. I should say I decided. He had no thoughts on this, and I know he's nervous. We're gonna bump up the bourbon here. So pour that while I ask you some of these questions. So the first one is the one app, right? I'm gonna get into your one, your Wrapped. So the first question is just give me. I know you're not really a Spotify guy, except for when I send you clips, right? But for the most part, you're an Apple Music guy. Give me some highlights from your Wrapped for the Apple Music this year. Maybe turn them on to a new artist or something.
My number one artist of the year was Wilder Woods.
Okay.
Number one album was Curioso, which was from his release from this year. So that was big for me. Mumford & Sons, Rushmere.
Okay.
Ugh. End to end. That's an album. You know, like you and I have talked about this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it used to be that you'd buy an album and you loved an album for it being an album and you would listen for it from front to back and you never listened to it separately. Rushmere for me, Mumford & Sons, that's an album. I haven't heard an album like that in a really long time.
Do you have it on vinyl?
I don't have it on vinyl.
Okay.
You know, I appreciate you asking that because I'm thinking I just ordered a record player. I don't even have one in the house.
Interesting. So wait,
I
you
don't do any
told me
vinyl.
forever I needed to get one. I finally did. I got it before you did.
You got it before I did.
That's wild. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I have a way now to hook it into my Sonos.
Nice.
And to actually have the record player be out while I'm doing that,
Yep,
not
yep.
like wired in a closet someplace. So that's the way I'm going to do this. I'm excited to start picking off some of these things in vinyl.
Love it. I love that. That makes me happy because when you come over to the house for some wine and the next dinner, I'll be playing some of our vinyls
Okay,
that I've been doing. It's in the bourbon room. Go figure. There's a
The
theme
warmth
developing.
it creates. It's the same audio, but it's just about the medium.
Yep.
The analog warmth in there is just something that I love.
It's different. Yeah, it's totally different. Okay, so we went off on a tangent there.
It's okay.
So last year when we finished, you were reading The Creative Act by Rick Rubin.
Yep.
So I'm going to ask you
Speaking
this.
of good vinyl, right?
Yeah,
That
right.
guy was involved in, sure.
So let me ask you this question first. Simple answer. Did you finish that book?
I did, but in like 897 chunks. I think the reason why I love that book and I recommended it last year was that it really is pertinent in terms of being able to jump around and kind of get to a particular category. It's not really a book as much as it is a tome of tidbits around the creative process. Loved it.
Okay. Okay. And what do you read now?
I got a couple. I mean, I mentioned that I reread Tim Sanders' Love is the Killer app. There's two things I'm in the middle of right now. One is James Wang, What You Need to Know About AI.
Okay.
This is a great book. It's simple. It's laid out very well. Like every big AI book that I've read gets so deep so quick. I wouldn't hand this to my mom, but I'd hand it to a non-techie business leader. I don't think they'd get past chapter 6, but like here I am on page 118, like AI is in software. It's just good context. So good book. Great. I'm enjoying that. The other one that I'm doing is I'm rereading, and this is wild. I've mentioned this on the show. I love this book. I'm rereading The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. And if you don't know who Ray Kurzweil is, like he used to be able to get Kurzweil keyboards. Like he was like an audiophile and the whole 9 yards. He wrote this book in 2005. And there's chapters about AI when AI, frankly, didn't even really exist yet. And of course, you know, the concept of the singularity is the moment when the machines get smart, or at least self-aware, right? So great book. This is not light reading, by the way. The Singularity is Near. It is about as nerdy as you can get. But if you dig, you know, like nerdgasm stuff, that is the way to go.
Love it. And while we're on the book subject real quick, I should probably mention we had a couple authors on the show this year. Tim Sanders, Jack Jackson, The Reaction to Inaction, Indy Young, Time to Listen. Some great authors. So go check out their books. Do a Google search.
I mean, high recommendation. Jack, I had Jack on before the book came out. And the book's great. And the topic's great. Reaction in Action. I think you get what that means just from the title. Really good book. And then Indy, we were surprised. Like that is some meaty content. It's around like personas and kind of the expectations of a two-way interaction and what that means. It's very human. It's a lot of human psychology. We had her on the show because she was doing it kind of in the era of tech and AI, and that episode and some of the snippets in particular went kind of crazy for us. Got a lot of traffic, and I enjoyed. I read the whole book before it, and she was like, "Oh, I'm not used to people reading the book before I get into an interview." You know what I mean? They usually get the clip notes. The book's great. It wasn't what I expected, and I thought it was incredibly pertinent for like what we're all dealing with as business executives right now. So
awesome. That's great. Are you an affiliate? You're gonna get a cut of all the books sold off?
Nope, not at all.
just
not
so we're clear.
Any profits from my book recommendation?
Very good. All right, and one more thing, real quick, and then I'm gonna kind of step back and let you take the reins here. Actually, two more things. You in past episodes, go back if you haven't seen this, but you credit your old manager Billy Stott, and one of the quotes was, "Just remember, everybody in the club is working too," which changed the way you looked at different things, including your music career. And we don't need to get into that part of it. But are there any new mentors or folks that you would direct our listeners to go and seek out? Any other podcast hosts that you are tuned into that you think would be valuable to the folks that are listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned them. You hit Tim Sanders, he's great. Hit Neil Foard. Neil Foard's great. I mean, even if you don't need to overcommit there, just follow him. His snippets are fantastic. It's a bit of joy in my feed every morning when I have my coffee if Neil's popping in there. Those were kind of my obsession this year. It's amazing how they lined up with our guests.
I couldn't agree more with that one. All right, now I'm going to go off topic here, and I'm going to read you a poem that I wrote for you.
Okay, shoot.
How's that make you feel?
Oh boy,
I'm
really, really nervous now.
I didn't really write this poem, but I think you're going to recognize it once I say it, but I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Yep.
You fine-tuned your sound with such flair, each mic and mix handled with care. From Bridgepointe's big stage to Suno's jazz page, your year showed true craft, and you there everywhere. Do you know what that is?
No.
That was the poem from the ChatGPT Wrapped that you sent me of you. So this could go in the wrong direction, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
What did your ChatGPT Wrapped look like?
So truth be told, you asked me to send you my rap, and I was just like, okay, where do I go get it? And I shot it to you, and I created a little PDF, and I really didn't dig into it too much. I didn't realize it wrote a haiku about what I was doing. But I mean, I think it's accurate. I use ChatGPT like a thought partner. I use Copilot quite a bit there too, particularly as it relates to work, because it has kind of access inside the work domain. And what's interesting is because you and I put out so much content, I get to start all my things with, as Scott Kinka, ask question, because it's got all the transcripts and all the recordings, and it's just a good way of like coalescing rather than going back and rereading or rewatching a bunch of episodes. You can be like, what happened here? What were we thinking here? In fact, I used it quite a bit when I was thinking about what we really want to predict and how we want to theme the show coming into season 4 in 2026. So that's interesting. But if you think about those things, I use it a lot on audio for my personal fun work and music, and also on the podcast, this mic, this combo, this thing, because we do quite a bit of production out of our homes.
Yep.
2, I used it quite a bit on messaging, was instrumental in putting together, for all of our people, but for me in particular, 16 hours of content, in front of hundreds of people at Summit.
Yep.
I use it all the time as a thought partner around that. And I think those are the two main things I pointed out in the haiku there, right?
Yep.
Tweaking. But again, I think this gets back to what you were saying. If you're worried about your job, go ask ChatGPT about your job. I mean, that's the way to really kind of understand and begin to build up. I wasn't asking ChatGPT for its information. I was asking ChatGPT to analyze my words, my thoughts, help me be my thought partner. I want to create a thing around this. Here's my ideas. Help me wordsmith it. Help me coalesce it. Point me in some other directions of things to think about. So it was good. The one thing I did page through it though, and it created a little image. which I loved
Yeah.
because it was my computer and a microphone standing up and a Phillies baseball
I
hat.
saw it. Yeah,
Which was
I
great.
saw it.
It made a little 8-bit of my life in ChatGPT.
Well, listen,
Kind of wild.
Yeah, I love how you said that in the beginning because I'll typically ask Scott for a lot of things to send me without context because I know if I give you context, you're going to dig in and probably rip it apart.
Yep.
So I was like, give it to me and I'm just going to go off,
Yep.
off riff here. All right, so here we go. We're coming into the home stretch here, okay? First of all, I'm Italian, so if we don't Cent'anni right now,
Okay.
it's bad
All right.
luck.
Are we doing
so
it now?
to 2025 and what's coming in 26, I salute you, sir.
And you, my friend.
And all the listeners, we appreciate it.
Thanks for hanging with me. Don't you have to take a sip before you can't put that down.
It's a hell of a good call. And I was thinking about that, but I'm thinking about so many things. I gotta end this well.
That's good bourbon.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere on the East Coast, right? Is that what they say? That's what I've been saying.
Hopefully when you're listening, it's 5 o'clock. How's that?
Yeah, well, hopefully you shared that with us. All right, so to end this, I'm gonna basically fold up my fold and let you take the reins and run it until it goes into the ground or you close it out, whatever you decide. This is where I think people are still here. This is what they're going to want to hear from you. I want you to predict the top categories or trends for 2026 and tease what we have coming. So I am gonna get out of the way, sir.
It's funny. Everybody loves their lists. And I spent a little bit of time thinking about what our list was going to be this year. And it's usually trends. I think we do trends at the end of every year. And we could always go back and talk about the trends from last year. I think we actually had that on the list, but Lord knows this episode's running way longer than we thought it was going to run.
We lost all the tech guys. They went home.
Right? I would say, most technology trends lists, they focus on tools. They're about this stuff. And I think, I'm going to do 26 by not doing a tech trends list.
Okay.
I think we're going to focus on a design list.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, they're not product trends. They're more around the design decisions that IT organizations are making about how they work, how they scale, how they protect, how they compete heading into 26. So yeah, they're techie and they're nerdy, but I think thematically this year, we're going to really focus. Yes, we're going to get into the tech, but we're going to focus on kind of human-centered, what I would call intentional IT use. So while, I'll give you these are my notes from a blog that I'm writing to kind of introduce my design list for 26. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to kind of hit on the idea here. Here's one of them. Our goal for this year is to move AI to the background. And what I mean by that is if we're talking about AI, it means you're probably not using it right. This gets back to the concept we were talking about earlier, like my mom calling in and not realizing that she's not hitting 1, 2, and 3 anymore, but she's actually talking to the bot on the other end. The modality hasn't changed in terms of how she's interacting with the bank because she's still going to pick up a phone, right? But it's AI underneath. If we're thinking about AI, if we're talking about AI, we're probably not doing AI right. So we want to move that to the background. I think, hybrid work. We've talked ad nauseum about the technology around it. It's not broken. Leadership is broken. Right? Vague stories are broken. Hybrid work is going to become a performance strategy, not a where do we work, how do we recoup cost strategy. That's another bucket. I think we've talked about cybersecurity. Remember what I said earlier? I would tie it back in.
Yeah.
And you said you were surprised that was as low as 6. And I said, I'm not surprised because people don't want to be scared. Right? We've been talking about this, zero trust methodology around, no, the issue really needs to become, what do we trust? Because we're already in a business of having to put the 4 walls up, So the idea is, it's not about keeping people out. It's about knowing who's in, right? So it's just really this kind of idea of purposefully and thematically changing our stories to be people-centered, intentionally centered, and focused on what business outcomes that we can drive. And I would say lastly, and all of these things that I just mentioned will be in my top 10 list that's going to be in this blog that we're going to put out. And we'll tie it back, I'm sure, to some of these clips when the social kit goes out. But
Okay.
I think IT leadership becomes about orchestration. There are lots of tools. There are lots of things that are out there that we can use, but we make our jobs about the things, not about how we use the things. And we're going to really, really focus our energy on making sure that we focus on how we use those things for outcomes this year. So that's going to be my challenge to our upcoming guests.
Okay.
And that's really what 26 is about. So here we are about to launch into season 4. Will this be officially the last episode of season 3 or the first episode of season 4?
6 in one, half in the other. I don't know, whatever that people decide.
Depends on how they feel.
Yeah.
But we're embarking in season 4. This year, you can see we're in a new environment. We're going to be doing more this way. We're going to be doing more live. We're going to be bringing in more folks from kind of the outside of our technology community, authors, people in government. We've got some real interest on the customer side from the list that's coming up. So stay tuned to see some of your favorites come back. Some really interesting new ones coming into the fold, and a real purposeful conversation, I think, really not just for IT leaders, but for business leaders around harnessing technology for business transformation and change. And we're going to step it up, probably about the same, maybe 26 episodes, maybe it's more. We'll figure out what that is. But here is my request. If you've made it this far, you found something of value. And hopefully, maybe you've just seen some of the snippets and you meandered your way here. Maybe you're already a follower and a fan. But this is going to be the year. Follow us everywhere. Even if you don't have time for what is a lengthy episode like this one, we're going to be heavy on pulling out the snippets. We're going to be doing some shorter form versions of the episodes that are a little bit longer than the snippets that just hit the highlights. But there are going to be nuggets and goodies aplenty for you to bring into your business. There's going to be smart people you never thought you'd get to get this kind of candid conversation with that you're going to get to see on the episodes. And, there's going to be a way for you to derive value out of the Bridgecast in this coming year that you can really bring into your business to create a human and intentionally centered IT strategy in 2026.
As is always beautifully said, and I think if you're good, that's a wrap.
Well, here we go. You got to wrap it the right way.
Let's wrap it.
To 25, and here we go into 26. Gene, thank you for everything. This is year 4.
Thanks, Scott.
Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we're appreciative of Bridgepointe Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepointe, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out bridgepointetechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepointe, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps give us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there in business and in life. Do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.